The Ramayana by Valmiki, translated by Ralph T.H. Griffith. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The present recording is by Raju from Burleson, Texas, United States. Ramina45 at hotmail.com. Section 4. Book 1, Cantos 12 to 15 of the Ramayana. Canto 12. The sacrifice begun. Again the spring with genial heat returning made the year complete. To win him sons without delay, his vow the king resolved to pay. Unto Vasishtha, saintly man, in modest words this speech began. Prepare the rite with all things fit, as is ordained in holy writ, and keep with utmost care afar whatever its sacred forms might mar. Thou art, my lord, my trustiest guide, kind-hearted and my friend beside. So is to meet thou undertake this heavy task for duty's sake. Then he of twice born men the best his glad assent at once expressed. Fain will I do whatever may be desired, O honoured king, by thee. To ancient priests he spoke, who, trained in holy rites, deep skill had gained. Here gods be stationed, good and sage, religious men of trusted age, and various workmen send and call, who frame the door and build the wall. With men of every art and trade, who read the stars and ply the spade, and mimes and minstrels hither bring, and damsels trained to dance and sing. Then to the learned man he said, in many a page of scripture read, be yours each rite performed to see, according to the king's decree. And stranger Brahmins quickly call to this great rite that welcomes all. Pavilions for the princess deck, with art and ornament erect, and handsome booths by thousands made, the Brahmans visitors to shade. Arranged in order side by side, with meat and drink and all supplied. And ample stables we shall need, for many an elephant and steed. And chambers where the men may lie, and vast apartments broad and high, fit to receive the countless bands of warriors come from distant lands. For our own people too provide sufficient tents extended wide, and stores of meat and drink prepare, and all that can be needed there. And food in plenty must be found for guests from all the country round. Of various viands presents make, for honour not for pity's sake, that fit regard and worship be paid to each caste in due degree. And let not wish or wrath excite your hearts the meanest guest to slight. But still observe with special grace those who obtain the foremost place, whether for happier skill in art or bearing in the right their part. Do you, I pray, with friendly mind, perform the task to you assigned, and work the right as bids the law, without omission, slip or flaw. They answered, as thou seest fit, so will we do and not omit. The sage Vasishtha then addressed, Sumantra called at his behest, the princes of the earth in white, and famous lords who guard the right. Priest, warrior, merchant, lowly thrall, in countless thousands summon all. Wherever their home be, far or near, gather the good with honour here. And Janak, whose imperial sway the men of Mithila obey, the firm of vow, the dread of foes, who all the lore of scripture knows. Invite him here with honour, I, King Dasarada's old ally, and Kasi's lord of gentle speech, who finds a pleasant word for each. In length of days our monarch's peer, illustrious king, invite him here, the father of our ruler's bride, known for his virtues far and wide. The king whom Kekeya's realms obey, him with his son invite I pray, and Lomapad, the Anga's king, true to his vows and godlike bring. For be thine invitation sent to west and south and orient. Call those who rule Surashtra's land, Suvira's realm and Sindhu's strand, and all the kings of earth beside, in friendships bond with us allied. Invite them all to hasten in, with retinue and kith and kin. Vasishtha's speech without delay, Sumantra bent him to obey, and sent his trusty envoys forth, eastward and westward, south and north. Obedient to the saint's request, himself he hurried forth and pressed each nobler chief and lord and king to hasten to the gathering. Before the saint Vasishtha stood all those who wrought with stone and wood, and showed the work which every one in furtherance of the right had done. rejoiced their ready zeal to see. Thus to the craftsman all said he, I charge ye, masters, see to this, that there be nothing done amiss. And this I pray in mind be borne, that no one gift ye give in scorn. Whenever scorn a gift attends, great sin is his who thus offends. And now some days and nights had passed, and kings began to gather fast, and precious gems in liberal store, as gifts to Dasharatha bore. Then joy thrilled through Vasishta's breast, as thus the monarch he addressed. Obedient to thy high decree, the kings my lord are come to thee, and it has been my care to greet, and honor all with reverence meet. Thy servant's task is ended quiet, and all is ready for the rite. Come forth then to the sacred ground, where all in order will be found. Then Rishyasringa confirmed the tale, nor did their words to move him fail. The stars propitious influence lent, when forth the world's great ruler went. Then by the sage Vasishta led, the priest began to speed those glorious rites wherein is shed the lifeblood of the steed. End of Canto 12. Canto 13. The sacrifice finished. The circling year had filled its course, and back was brought the wandering horse. Then upon Sarju's northern stand began the rite the king had planned. With Rishyasringa the forms to guide, the Brahmans to their task applied. At that great offering of the steed, their lofty-minded king decreed. The priests who all the scripture knew performed their part in order due, and circled round in solemn train, as precepts of the law ordain. Pravargya rites were duly sped, for upasads the flames were fed. Then from the plant the juice was squeezed, and those high saints with minds well pleased performed the mystic rites begun. With bathing air the rise of sun, they gave the portion Indra's claim, and hymned the king whom none can blame. The midday bathing followed next, observed as bids the holy text. Then the good priest with utmost care informed that scripture's rule declare. For the third time pure water shed on high-souled Dasaratha's head. Then Rishyasringa and all the rest to Indra and the gods addressed their sweet-toned hymn of praise and prayer, and called them in the right to share. With sweetest song and hymn intoned, they give the gods in heaven enthroned. As duty bids the gifts they claim, the holy oil that feeds the flame, and many an offering there was paid, and not one slip in all was made. For with most careful heed they saw that all was done by Veda law. None all those days was seen oppressed by hunger or by toil distressed. Why speak of humankind? No beast was there that lacked an ample feast. For there was store for all who came, for orphan child and lonely dame. The old and young were well supplied, the poor and hungry satisfied. Throughout the day ascetics fed, and those who roamed to beg their bread. While all around the cry was still, give forth, and eat your fill. Give forth with liberal hand the meal, and various robes in largest deal. Urged by these cries on every side, unweariedly their task they plied, and heaps of food like hills in size, in boundless plenty met their eyes. And lakes of sauce, each day renewed, refreshed the weary multitude, and strangers there from distant lands, and women folk in crowded bands. The best of food and drink obtained, at the great rite the king ordained. Apart from all the Brahmins there, thousands and thousands took their share of various dainties sweet to taste, on plates of gold and silver placed, all ready set, as when they willed, the twice-born men their places filled, and servants in fair garments dressed, waited upon each Brahman guest. Of cheerful mind and mien were they, with gold and jewelled earrings gay. The best of Brahmans praised the fare, of countless sorts of flavour rare. And thus to Raghu's son they cried, We bless thee, and are satisfied. Between the rites some Brahmans spend the time in learned argument, with ready flow of speech sedate, and keen to vanquish in debate. There day by day the holy train performed all rites as rules ordained. No priest in all that host was found, but kept the vows that held him bound. None but the holy Vedas knew, and all their sixfold signs too. No Brahman there was found unfit to speak with eloquence and wit. And now the appointed time came near, the sacrificial post to rear. They brought them and prepared to fix of Bel and Kadir 6 and 6. Six made of pulsar's tree, of fig wood one apart to be, of Sleshmath and Devdar, one column each the mightiest far. So thick the two the arms of man, their ample girth would fail to span. All these with utmost care were wrought, by hand of priests in scripture taught, and all with gold were gilded bright, to add new splendor to the rite. 20 and 1 those stakes in all, each 1 and 20 cubits tall, and 1 and 20 ribbons there, hung on the pillars bright and fair. Firm in the earth they stood at last, where cunning craftsmen fixed them fast, and there unshaken each remained, octagonal and smoothly planed. Then ribbons over all were hung, and flowers and scent around them flung. Thus decked they cast a glory forth, like the great saints who star the north. The sacrificial altar then was raised by skilful twice born men. In shape and figure to behold, an eagle with his wings of gold, with twice 9 pits and formed threefold, each for some special god. Beside the pillars were the victims tied, the birds that roam the wood, the air, the water and the land were there, and snakes and things of reptile birth, and healing herbs that spring from earth, as text prescribed in scripture found. 300 victims there were bound. The steed devoted to the host of gods, the gem they honor most, was duly sprinkled then the queen, Kausalya, with delighted mien. With reverent steps around him paced, and with sweet wreaths the victim graced. Then with 3 swords, in order due, she smote the steed with joy and slew. That night the queen a son to gain, with calm and steady heart was fain, by the dead charger's side to stay, from evening till the break of day. Then came 3 priests, their care to lead, the other queens to touch the steed, upon Kausalya's to attend, their company and aid to lend. As by the horse she still reclined, with happy mien and cheerful mind. With ricious rings the twice born came, and praised and blessed the royal dame, the priest who well his duty knew, and every sense could well subdue. From out of the bony chambers freed, and boiled the marrow of the steed. Above the steam the monarch bent, and as he smelled the fragrant scent, in time and order drove afar all error that his hopes could mar. Then 16 priests together came, and cast into the sacred flame the severed members of the horse, made ready all in ordered course. On piles of holy fig tree raised, the meaner victims' bodies blazed. The steed of all the creatures slain alone required a pile of cane. 3 days, as is by law decreed, lasted that offering of the steed. The Chatushtam began the rite, and when the sun renewed his light, the Uktya followed, after came the Atirata's holy flame. These were the rites and many more, arranged by light of holy lore, the Aptorium of mighty power, and each performed in proper hour. The Abhijit and Viswajit, with every form and service fit, and with the sacrifice at night, the Jyotishtam and Ayus rite. The task was done as laws prescribe. The monarch, glory of his tribe, bestowed the land in liberal grants upon the sacred ministrants. He gave the region of the east his conquest to the Hotri priest, the west the celebrant obtained, the south the priest presiding gained. The northern region was the share of him who chanted forth the prayer. Thus did each priest obtain his meed at the great slaughter of the steed. Ordained the best of all to be, by self-existent deity, Ikshvaku's son with joyful mind, this noble fee to each assigned. But all the priests with one accord addressed that unpolluted Lord, it's thine alone to keep the whole of this broad earth in firm control. No gift of lands from thee we seek, to guard these realms our hands were weak. On sacred lore our days are spent, let other gifts our wants content. The chief of old Ikshvaku's line gave them 10,100,000 kine, 100 millions of fine gold, the same in silver 4 times told. But every priest in presence there, with one accord resigned his share. To Saint Vasishtha high of soul, and Rishya's ring they gave the whole. That largesse pleased those Brahmins well, who bade the prince his wishes tell. Then Dasratha, mighty king, made answer thus to Rishya's ring. O holy hermit of thy grace, vouchsafe the increase of my race. He spoke, nor was his prayer denied. The best of Brahmins thus replied, 4 sons, O monarch, shall be thine, upholders of thy royal line. End of Canto 13. Canto 14. Ravan doomed. The saint, well read in holy lore, pondered a while his answer o'er, and thus again addressed the king, his wandering thoughts regathering. Another rite will I begin, which shall the sons thou cravest win, where all things shall be duly sped, and first Atharva text be read. Then by Vibhandak's gentle son was that high sacrifice begun, the king's advantage seeking still, and zealous to perform his will. Now all the gods had gathered there, each one for his allotted share. Brahma, the ruler of the sky, Stanu, Narayan, Lord Most High, and holy Indra men might view, with Maruts for his retinue, the heavenly chorister and saint, and spirit pure from earthly taint, with one accord had sought the place, the high-souled monarch's right to grace. Then to the gods who came to take their proper share the hermit spake, for you has Dasartha slain, the votive steed a son to gain. Stern penance rites the king has tried, and in firm faith on you relied. And now with undiminished care a second rite would fain prepare. But O ye gods, consent to grant the longing of your supplicant. For him beseeching hands I lift, and pray you all to grant the gift, that 4 fair sons of high renown the offerings of the king may crown. They to hermit's son replied, his longing shall be gratified. For Brahman in most high degree, we love the king and honor thee. These words the gods in answer said, and vanished thence by Indra led. Thus to the Lord, the worlds who made, the immortals all assembled prayed. O Brahma, mighty by thy grace, Ravan who rules the giant race, torments us in his senseless pride, and penance-loving saints beside. For thou, well pleased in days of old, gavest the boon that makes him bold, that god nor demon ever should kill his charmed life, for so thy will. We, honoring that high behest, bear all his rage, though sore distressed. That lord of giants fierce and fell, scourges the earth and heaven and hell. Mad with thy boon, his impious rage smites saint and bard and god and sage. The sun himself withholds his glow, the wind in fear forbears to blow. The fire restrains his wonted heat, where stand the dreaded Ravan's feet, and necklaced with the wandering wear, the sea before him fears to rave. Kuvera's self in sad defeat is driven from his blissful seat. We see, we feel the giant's might, and woe comes over us and affright. To thee, O Lord, thy suppliants pray, to find some cure this plague to stay. Thus by the gathered gods addressed, he pondered in his secret breast, and said, only one way I find, to slay this fiend of evil mind. He prayed me once his life to God, from demon, god, and heavenly bard, and spirits of the earth and air, and I consenting heard his prayer. But the proud giant in scorn recked not of man of woman born. None else may take his life away, but only man the fiend may slay. The gods with Indra at their head rejoiced to hear the words he said. Then crowned with glory like a flame, Lord Vishnu to the council came. His hands shell, mace, and discus bore, out saffron were the robes he wore. Riding his eagle through the crowd, as the sun rides upon a cloud. With bracelets of fine gold he came, loud welcomed by the gods' acclaim. His praise they sang with one consent, and cried, in lowly reverence bent, O Lord, whose hand fierce Madhu slew, be thou our refuge firm and true. Friend of the suffering worlds art thou, we pray thee help thy suppliants now. Then Vishnu spake, ye gods declare, what may I do to grant your prayer? King Dasartha, thus cried they, fervent in penance many a day, the sacrificial steed has slain, longing for sons but all in vain. Now at the cry of us forlorn, incarnate as his seed be born, 3 queens has he, each lovely dame, like beauty, modesty, or fame. Divide thyself in 4 and be his offspring by these noble 3. Man's nature take and slay in fight, Ravan who laughs at heavenly might. This commons covers this ranking thorn, whom the 3 worlds too long have borne. For Ravan in the senseless pride of might unequalled has defied the host of heaven and plagues with woe, angel and bard and saint below, crushing each spirit and each maid who plays in Nandan's heavenly shade. O conquering Lord, to thee we bow. Our surest hope and trust art thou. Regard the world of men below and slay the gods' tremendous foe. When thus the suppliant gods had prayed, his wise reply Narayan made. What task demands my presence there, and whence this dread, ye gods declare? The gods replied, We fear, O Lord, fierce Ravener abhorred. Be thine the glorious task, we pray, in human form this fiend to slay. By thee of all the blessed alone, this sinner may be overthrown. He gained by penance long and dire the favour of the mighty sire. Then he who every gift bestows guarded the fiend from heavenly foes, and gave a pledge his life that kept from all things living man except. On him thus armed no other foe than man may deal the deadly blow. Assume, O king, a mortal birth, and strike the demon to the earth. Then Vishnu, God of gods, the Lord, supreme by all the worlds adored, to Brahma and the suppliants spake, Dismiss your fear, for your dear sake. In battle will I smite him dead, the cruel fiend, the immortals dread, and lords and ministers and all, his kith and kin with him shall fall. Then in the world of mortal men, 10,000 years and hundreds 10, I as a human king will reign, and guard the earth as my domain. God said out nymph and minstrel throng, with heavenly voices raised their song, in hymns of triumph to the God, whose conquering feet on Madhu trod. Champion of gods as men appear, this cruel Ravan slay, then taunt that saints and hermits fear, the plague that none can stay. In savage fury uncontrolled, his pride forever grows. He dares the Lord of gods to hold among his deadly foes. End of Canto 14. Canto 15. The Nectar. When wisest Vishnu thus had given his promise to the gods of heaven, he pondered in his secret mind a suited place of birth to find. Then he decreed the lotus-eyed in four his being to divide, and Dasratha, gracious king, he chose as sire from whom to spring. That childless prince of high renown, who smote in war his foemen down, at that same time with utmost care prepared the right that wins an heir. Then Vishnu, fain on earth to dwell, bade the Almighty Sire farewell, and vanished while a reverent crowd of gods and saints in worship bowed. The monarch watched the sacred rite, when a vast form of awful might, of matchless splendor, strength, and size, was manifest before his eyes. From forth the sacrificial flame, dark robed in red, the being came. His voice was drum-like, loud and low, his face suffused with rosy glow. Like a huge lion's mane appeared the long locks of his hair and beard. He shone with many a lucky sign and many an ornament divine. A towering mountain in his height, a tiger in his gait and might, no precious mine more rich could be, no burning flame more bright than he. His arms embraced in loving hold, like a dear wife a vase of gold, whose silver lining had a draught of nectar as in heaven is quaffed. A vase so vast, so bright to view, they scarce could count the vision true. Upon the king his eyes he bent, and said, The Lord of life has sent his servant down, O prince, to be a messenger from heaven to thee. The king with all his nobles by raised reverent hands and made reply, Welcome, O glorious being, say, how can my care thy grace repay? Envoy of him whom all adore, thus to the king he spake once more. The gods accept thy worship they, give thee the blessed fruit today. Approach and take, O glorious king, this heavenly nectar which I bring. For it shall give thee sons and wealth, and bless thee with store of health. Give it to those fair queens of thine, and bid them quaff in the drink divine. And they the princely sons shall bear, long sought by sacrifice and prayer. Ye, O my lord, the monarch said, and took the vase upon his head. The gift of gods of fine gold wrought, with store of heavenly liquor fraught. he honored, filled with transport new, that wondrous being fair to view. As round the envoy of the god, with reverential steps he trod, his errand done, that form of light arose and vanished from the sight. High rapture filled the monarch's soul, possessed of that celestial bowl, as when a man by want distressed with unexpected wealth is blessed. And rays of transport seemed to fall, illuminating bower and hall, as when the autumn moon rides high and floods with lovely light the sky. Quick to the lady's bower he sped, and thus to Queen Kausalya said, "This genial nectar take and quaff." He spoke and gave the lady half. Part of the nectar that remained, Sumitra from his hand obtained. He gave to make her fruitful too, Kaikeyi half the residue. A portion yet remaining there, he paused a while to think, then gave Sumitra with her share the remnant of the drink. Thus on each queen of those fair three, a part the king bestowed, and with sweet hope a child to see, their yearning bosoms glowed. The heavenly bowl the king supplied, their longing souls relieved, and soon with rapture and with pride each royal dame conceived. He gazed upon each lady's face, and triumphed as he gazed, as Indra in his royal palace, by gods and spirits praised. End of Canto 15. Section 5. Book 1. Cantos 16 to 20 of the Ramayana. Canto 16. The Warners. When Vishnu thus had gone on earth from the great king to take his birth, the self-existent Lord of all addressed the gods who heard his call. For Vishnu's sake, the strong and true, who seeks the good of all of you, make helps in war to lend him aid, in forms that change at will arrayed. Of wizard skill and hero might, outstrippers of the wind in flight, skilled in the arts of counsel wise, and Vishnu's peers in the bold emprise. With heavenly arts and prudence fraught, by no devices to be caught, skilled in all weapons lore and use, as they who drink the immortal juice. And led the nymphs supreme in grace, and maidens in the minstrel race, monkeys and snakes and those who row, free spirits of the hill and grove, and wandering daughters of the air, in monkey from brave children bare, so erst the Lord of bears I shape, born from my mouth as wide I gaped. Thus by the mighty sire addressed, they all obeyed his high behest, and thus begot in countless swarms, brave son disguised in sylvan forms. Each god, each sage became a sire, each minstrel of the heavenly choir, each fawn of children strong and good, whose feet should roam the hill and wood. Snakes, bards, and spirits, serpents bold, had sons too numerous to be told. Bali, the woodland host who led, high as Mahendra's lofty head, was Indra's child, the noblest fire. The son was great, Sugriva's sire. Tara, the mighty monkey, he was offspring of Brihaspati. Tara, the matchless chieftain boast, for wisdom of the Vanar host. Of Gandhamadan brave and bold, the father was the lord of gold. Nala, the mighty, dear to fame, of skilful Visvakarma came. From Agni Nila, bright as flame, who in his splendor, might and worth, surpassed the sire who gave him birth. The heavenly Ashwins, swift and fair, were fathers of a noble pair, who Dvivida and Mainda named, for beauty like their sires were famed. Varun was father of Sushan, of Sarab he who sends the rain. Hanuman, best of monkey kind, was son of him who breathes the wind. Like thunderbolt in frame was he, and swift as Garud's self could flee. These thousands did the gods create, endowed with might that none could mate. In monkey forms that changed at will, so strong their wish the fiend to kill. In mountain size, like lions stood, upsprang the wondrous multitude. Auxiliar hosts in every shape, monkey and bear and highland ape. In each the strength, the might, the mien of his own parent god were seen. Some chiefs of Vanar mothers came, some of she-bear and minstrel dame. Skilled in all arms in battle shock, the brandished tree, the loosened rock. And prompt should other weapons fail, to fight and slay with tooth and nail. Their strength could shake the hills amain, and rend the rooted trees in twain. Disturbed with their impetuous sweep, the rivers lord the ocean deep. rend with their feet the seated ground, and pass wide floods with airy bound, or forcing through the sky their way, the very clouds by force could stay. Mad elephants that wander through the forest wilds could they subdue, and with their furious shout could scare dead upon earth the birds of air. So were the sylvan chieftains formed, thousands on thousands still they swarmed. These were the leaders honored most, the captains of the Warner host. And to each lord and chief and gate was monkey offspring born beside. Then by the bear's great monarch stood the other roamers of the wood, and turned their pathless homes to seek, to forest and to mountain peak. The leaders of the monkey band by the two brothers took their stand. Sugriva, offspring of the sun, and Bali, Indra's mighty one. They both endowed with Garud's might, and skilled in all the arts of fight. Wandered in arms the forest through, and lions, snakes, and tigers slew. But every monkey, ape, and bear ever was Bali's special care. With his vast strength and mighty arm, he kept them from all scathe and harm. And so the earth with hill, wood, seas was filled with mighty ones like these, of various shape and race and kind, with proper homes to each assigned, with Rama's champions fierce and strong. The earth was overspread, high as the hills and clouds a throng, with bodies vast and red. End of Canto 16. Canto 17. Precious Rings Return. Now when the high-souled monarchs ride, the Ashwamedh was finished quite, their sacrificial dues obtained, the gods their heavenly homes regained. The lofty-minded saints withdrew, each to his place with honor due, and kings and chieftains one and all, who came to grace the festival. And Dasaratha, ere they went, addressed them thus benevolent: Now may you, each with joyful heart, to your own realms, O kings, depart. Peace and good luck attend you there, and blessing is my friendly prayer. Let cares of state each mind engage, to God his royal heritage. A monarch from his throne expelled, no better than the dead is held. So he who cares for power and might must guard his realm and royal right. Such care a meed in heaven will bring, better than rites and offering. Such care a king his country owes, as man upon himself bestows. When for his body he provides raiment and every need besides, for future days should kings foresee, and keep the present error free. Thus did the king the kings exhort. They heard, and turned them from the court, and each to each in friendships bound, went forth to all the realms around. The rites were o'er, the guests were spread, the train the best of Brahmans led, in which the king with joyful soul, with his dear wives and with the whole of his imperial host and train, of cars and servants turned again, and as a monarch dear to fame, within his royal city came. Next Precious Ring, well-honoured sage, and Santa sought their hermitage. The king himself of prudent mind attended him, troops behind, and all her men the town outboard with Saint Vasishta and their lord, high mounted on a car of state, or canopied for Santa's sake. Drawn by white oxen, while a band of servants marched in either hand, great gifts of countless price she bore, with sheep and goats and gems in show. Like beauty's self the lady shone, with all the jewels she had on, as happy in her sweet content, peerless amid the fair she went. Not Queen Paulomi's self could be more loving to her lord than she. She who had lived in happy ease, honoured with all her heart could please, while dames and kinsfolk ever vied to see her wishes gratified. Soon as she knew her husband's will, again to seek the forest still, was ready for the hermit's cot, nor murmured at her altered lot. The king attended to the wild, that hermit and his own dear child, and in the centre of a throng of noble courtiers rode along. The sage's son had let prepare a lodge within the wood, and there, while they lingered blithe and gay, then duly honoured went their way. The glorious hermit Precious Ring drew near and thus besought the king: Return, my honoured lord, I pray, return upon thy homeward way. The monarch with the waiting crowd lifted his voice and wept aloud, and with eyes dripping still to reach of his good queens he spake this speech: Kausalya and Sumitra dear, and thou, my sweet Kaikeyi, here, all upon Santa's feast you gaze, the last time for a length of days, to Santa's arms the ladies leapt, and hung about her neck and wept, and cried, "Oh, happy be the life of this great Brahman and his wife! The wind, the fire, the moon on high, the earth, the streams, the circling sky, preserve thee in the wood, true spouse, devoted to thy husband's vows. And, oh dear Santa, never neglect to pay the dues of meek respect to the great saint thy husband sire, with all observance and with fire. And sweet one, pure of fault and blame, forget not thou thy husband's claim. In every change in good and ill, let thy sweet words delight him still, and let thy worship constant be. Her Lord is woman's deity. To learn thy welfare, dearest friend, the king will many a Brahman send. Let happy thoughts thy spirit cheer, and be not troubled, daughter dear. These soothing words the ladies said, and pressed their lips upon her head. Each gave with sighs her last adieu, then at the king's command withdrew. The king around the hermit went, with circling footsteps reverent, and placed at Rishyasring's command some soldiers of his royal band. The Brahman bowed in turn and cried, "May fortune never leave thy side, O mighty king, with justice reign, and still thy people's love retain." He spoke and turned away his face, and as the hermit went, the monarch rooted to the place, pursued with eyes intent. But when the sage had passed from view, King Dasarath turned him too, still fixing on his friend each thought, with such deep love his breast was fraught. Amid his people's loud claim, home to his royal seat he came, and lived delighted there, expecting when each queenly dame, upholder of his ancient fame, her promised son should bear. The glorious sage his way pursued, till close before his eyes he viewed sweet Champa, Lomapal's fair town, wreathed with a champak's leafy crown. Soon as the saint's approach he knew, the king, to yield him honor due, went forth to meet him with a band of priests and nobles of the land. "Hail, sage!" he cried. "O joy to me! What bliss it is, my lord, to see thee with thy wife and all thy train returning to my town again. Thy father, honored sage, is well, who hither from his woodland cell has sent full many a messenger for tidings both of thee and her." Then joyfully, for due respect, the monarch bade the town be decked. The king and Rishyasring elate entered the royal city's gate. In front the chaplain rode, then loved and honored with all care by monarch and by courtier there, the glorious saint abode. End of Canto 17. Canto 18. Rishyasring's departure. The monarch called a Brahman near, and said, "Now speed away to Kashyap's sons, the mighty seer, and with all reverence say, the holy child he holds so dear, the hermit of the noble mind, whose equal it were hard to find, returned is dwelling here. Go, and instead of me do thou, before that best of hermits bow, that still he may, for his dear son, show me the favour I have won." Soon as the king these words had said, to Kashyap's son the Brahman sped. Before the hermit low he bent, and did obeisance reverence. Then with meek words his grace to crave, the message of his lord he gave. The high-souled father of his pride had called thy son his rights to gain. Those rights are o'er, the steed is slain, the noble child is come again. Soon as the saint that speech had heard, his spirit with desire was stirred, to seek the city of the king, and to his court his son to bring. With young disciples at his side, forth on his way the hermit hied, while peasants from their hamlets ran to reverence the holy man. Each with his little gift of food, forth came the village multitude, and as they humbly bowed the head, "What may we do for thee?" they said. Then he of Brahmans first and best, the gathered people thus addressed, "Now tell me, for I fain would know, why is it I am honored so?" They to the high-souled saint replied, "Our ruler is with thee allied. Our master's order we fulfill. O Brahman, let thy mind be still." With joy the saintly hermit heard each pleasant and delightful word, and poured a benediction down on king and ministers and town. Glad at the words of that high saint, some servants hastened to acquaint their king, rejoicing to impart the tidings that would cheer his heart. Soon as the joyful tale he knew, to meet the saint the monarch flew. The guest gift in his hand he brought, and bowed before him and besought, this day by seeing thee again, not to have lived my life in vain. Now be not wroth with me, I pray, because I wiled thy son away. The best of Brahmans answer made, be not, great lord of kings, afraid. Thy virtues have not failed to win my favour, O thou pure of sin. Then in the front the saint was placed, the king came next in joyous haste, and with him entered his abode, mid glad acclaim as on they rode. To greet the sage the reverend crowd raised suppliant hands and humbly bowed. Then from the palace many a dame, following well-dressed Santa came, stood by the mighty saint and cried, see honoured source, thy son's dear bride. The saint, who every virtue knew, his arms around his daughter threw, and with a father's rapture pressed the lady to his wondering breast. Arising from the saint's embrace, she bowed her low before his face, and then with palm to palm applied, stood by her hermit father's side. He for his son, as laws ordain, performed the rite that frees from stain, and honoured by the wise and good, with him departed to the wood. End of Canto 18. Canto 19. The Birth of the Princess. The season 6 in rapid flight had circled since the glorious rite. 11 months had passed away. 'Twas Chaitra's 9th returning day. The moon within that mansion shone, which Aditi looks kindly on. Raised to their apex in the sky, 5 brilliant planets beamed on high. Shone with the moon in Cancer's sign, Brihaspati with light divine. Kausalya's bore an infant blessed, with heavenly marks of grace impressed. Rama, the universe lord, a prince by all worlds adored. Now glory queen Kausalya won, reflected from her splendid son. So Aditi shone more and more, the mother of the gods when she, the king of immortals, bore the thunder-wielding deity. The lotus-eyed, the beauteous boy, he came fierce Ravan to destroy. From half of Vishnu's vigour born, he came to help the worlds forlorn. And Queen Kaikeyi bore a child, of trust and valor Bharat styled, with every princely virtue blessed, 1/4 of Vishnu manifest. Sumitra too, a noble pair, called Lakshman and Shatrugna bore, of high emprise, devoted true, shares in Vishnu's essence too. Neath Pushya's mansion, Maina's sign, was Bharat's born, of soul benign. The sun had reached the crab at morn, when Queen Sumitra's babes were born. What time the moon had gone to make his nightly dwelling with the snake, the high-souled monarch's concerts bore, at different times those glorious four. Like to himself and virtuous bright, at Proshtapada's fourfold light, then danced the nymphs' celestial throng, the minstrel raised their strain, the drums of heaven pealed loud and long, and dovers came down in rain. Within Ayodhya blithe and gay, all kept the joyous holiday. The spacious square the ample road, with mimes and dancers overflow, and with the voice of music rang, where minstrels played and singers sang, and shone, a wonder to behold, with dazzling show of gems and gold. Nor did the king his largesse spare, for minstrel driver bard to share. Much wealth the Brahmans bore away, and many thousand dined that day. Soon as each babe was 12 days old, 'twas time the naming right to hold, when Saint Vasishtha, rapt with joy, assigned a name to every boy. Rama to him the high-souled heir, Bharat to him Kaikeyi bare. Of Queen Sumitra one fair son, was Lakshman and Shatrugna one. Rama his sire's supreme delight, like some proud banner cheered his sight, and to all creatures seemed to be the self-existent deity. All heroes versed in holy lore, to all mankind great love they bore. Fair stores of wisdom all possessed, with princely graces all were blessed. But mid those youths of high descent, with lordly light preeminent, like the full moon unclouded shone, Rama the world's dear paragon. His best the elephant could guide, urged the fleet car, the charger ride. A master of bowman's skill, joying to do his father's will. The world's delight and darling, he loved Lakshman best from infancy, and Lakshman, lord of lofty fate, upon his elder joy to wait, striving his second self to please, with friendship's sweet observances. His limb the hero never would rest, unless the couch his brother pressed. Except beloved Rama shared, he could not taste the meal prepared. When Rama, pride of Raghu's race, sprang on his steed to urge the chase, behind him Lakshman loved to go, and guard him with his trusty bow. As Rama was to Lakshman dear, more than his life and ever near, so fond Shatrughna prized above, his very life his brother's love. Illustrious heroes nobly kind, in mutual love they all combined, and gave their royal sire delight, with modest grace and warrior might. Supported by the glorious foe, shone Dasaratha more and more, as though with every guardian god, who keeps the land and skies, the father of all creatures trod the earth before men's eyes. End of Canto 19. Canto 20. Vishwamitra's visit. Now Dasaratha's pious mind, meet wedlock for his son's design. With priests and friends the king began to counsel and prepare his plan. Such thoughts engaged his bosom, when, to see Ayodhya's lord of men, a mighty saint of glorious fame, the hermit Vishwamitra came. For evil friends that roam by night disturbed him in each holy rite, and in their strength and frantic rage assailed with witcheries the sage. He came to seek the monarch's aid, to guard the rites the demons stayed, unable to a close to bring one unpolluted offering. Seeking the king in his dire strait, he said to those who kept the gate, "Haste, warders, to your master run, and say that here stands Gadi's son." Soon as they heard the holy man, to the king's chamber swift they ran, with minds disordered all, and spurred to wildest zeal by what they heard. On to the royal hall they sped, there stood and lowly bowed the head, and made the lord of men aware that the great saint was waiting there. The king with priest and peer arose, and ran the sage to meet, as Indra from his palace goes, Lord Brahma's self to greet. When glowing with celestial light, the pious hermit was in sight, the king whose mien his transport showed, the honoured gift for guests bestowed. Nor did the saint that gift despise, offered as holy texts advise. He kindly asked the earth's great king, how all with him was prospering. The son of Kausik bade him tell, if all in town and field were well, all well with friends and kith and kin, and royal treasure stored within. Do all thy neighbours own thy sway, thy foes confess thee yet? Dost thou continue still to pay to gods and men each debt? Then he of hermits first and best, Vasishtha with a smile addressed, and asked him of his welfare too, showing him honour as was due. Then with the sainted hermit all went joyous to the monarch's hall, and sate them down by due degree, each one of rank and dignity. Joy filled the noble prince's breast, who thus bespoke the honoured guest. As amidst by a mortal found, as rain upon the thirsty ground, as to an heirless man a son, born to him of his precious one, as gain of what we sorely miss, as sudden dawn of mighty bliss, so is thy coming here to me, all welcome mighty saint to thee. What wish within thy heart hast thou? If I can please thee, tell me how. Hail, saint, from whom all honours flow, worthy of all I can bestow. Blessed is my birth with fruit today, nor has my life been thrown away. I see the best of Brahman race, and right to glorious Mam gives place. Thou holy sage, in days of old, among the royal saints enrolled, didst penance glorified within, the Brahman caste high station win. 'Tis meet and right in many a way, that I to thee should honour pay. This seems a marvel to mine eyes, all sin thy visit purifies. And I by seeing thee, O sage, have reaped the fruit of pilgrimage. Then say what thou wouldst have me do, that thou hast sought this interview. Favoured by thee, my wish is still, O hermit, to perform thy will. Nor needest thou at length explain the object that thy heart would gain. Without reserve I grant it now, my deity, O Lord, art thou. This glorious hermit far renowned, with highest fame and virtue crowned, rejoice these modest words to hear, delightful to the mind and ear. End of section 5, Cantos 16 to 20. Book 1 of the Ramayana.
Canto 21. Vishwamitra's Speech. The hermit heard with high content that speech so wondrous eloquent, and while each hair with joy arose, he thus made answer at the close: Good is thy speech, O noble king, and like thyself in everything. So should their lips be wisdom fraught, whom kings begot. Vasishtha taught. The favour which I came to seek, thou grantest ere my tongue can speak. But let my tale attention claim, and hear the need for which I came. O king, as scripture texts allow, a holy rite employs me now. Two fiends who change their forms at will impede that rite with cursed skill. Oft when the task is nigh complete, these worst of fiends my toil defeat. Throw bits of bleeding flesh, and o'er the altar shed a stream of gore. When thus the rite is mocked and stayed, and all my pious hopes delayed, cast down in heart the spot I leave, and spent with fruitless labour grieve. Nor can I, checked by prudence, dare lose my fury on them there. The muttered curse, the threatening word, in such a rite must never be heard. Thy grace the right from check can free, and yield the fruit I long to see. Thy duty bids thee, king, defend the suffering guest, the suppliant friend. Give me thy son, thine eldest born, whom locks like raven's wings adorn, that hero youth, the truly brave, of thee, O glorious king, I carve. For he can lay those demons low, who mar my rites and work me woe. My power shall yield the youth from harm, and heavenly might shall nerve his arm. And on my champion will I shower unnumbered gifts of varied power, such gifts as shall ensure his fame, and spread through all the world his name. Be sure those fiends can never stand before the might of Rama's hand, and mid the best and bravest none can slay that pair but Raghu's son. Entangled in the toils of fate, those sinners, proud and obstinate, are in their fury overbold, no match for Rama, mighty souled. Nor let a father's breast give way too far to fond affections sway. Count thou the fiends already slain, my word is pledged, nor pledged in vain. I know the hero Rama well, in whom high thoughts and valor dwell. So does Vasishtha, so do these engaged in long austerities. If thou would do the righteous deed, and win high fame, thy virtues meed, fame that on earth shall last and live, to me, great king, thy Rama give. If to the words that I have said, with Saint Vasishtha at their head, thy holy men, O king, agree, then let thy Rama go with me. 10 nights my sacrifice will last, and ere the stated time be past, those wicked fiends, those impious twain, must fall by wondrous Rama slain. Let not the hours I warn thee fly, fixed for the right unheeded by. Good luck have thou, O royal chief, nor give thy heart to needless grief. Thus, in fair words with virtue fraught, the pious glorious saint besought, but the good speech with poignant sting pierced ear and bosom of the king, who, stabbed with pangs too sharp to bear, fell prostrate and lay fainting there. End of Canto. Canto 22. Dashradha's speech. His tortured senses all astray, awhile the hapless monarch lay. Then, slowly gathering thought and strength, to Vishwamitra spoke at length. My son is but a child, I ween. This year he will be just 16. How is he fit for such emprise, my darling with the lotus eye? A mighty army will I bring, that calls me master, lord, and king, and with its countless squadrons fight against these rovers of the night. My faithful heroes, skilled to wield the arms of war, will take the field. Their skill the demons might may break. Rama, my son, thou must not take. I, even I, my bow in hand, will in the van of battle stand, and while my soul is left alive, with the night roaming demons strive. Thy guarded sacrifice shall be completed, from all hindrance free. Thither will I my journey make. Rama, my child, thou must not take. A boy unskilled, he knows not yet the bounds to strength and weakness set. No match is he for demon foes, whose magic arts to arms oppose. O chief of saints, I have no power, of Rama reft, to live 1 hour. Mine aged heart at once would break. Rama, my child, thou must not take. 9,000 circling years have fled, with all their seasons o'er my head, and as a hard-won boon, O sage, these sons have come to cheer mine age. My dearest love amid the four is he whom first his mother bore. Still dearer for his virtue's sake, Rama, my child, thou must not take. But if, unmoved by all I say, thou needs must bear my son away, let me lead with him, I entreat, a fourfold army all complete. What is the demon's might, O sage? Who are they? What their parentage? What is their size? What beings lend their power to guard them and befriend? How can my son their arts withstand? Or I, or all my armed band? Tell me the whole, that I may know, to meet in war each evil foe, whom conscious might inspires with pride. And Vishwamitra thus replied. Sprung from Pulatsya's race, there came a giant known by Ravan's name. Once favored by the eternal sire, he plagues the worlds in ceaseless ire. For peerless power and might renowned, by giant bands encompassed round. Vishrvas for his sire they hold, his brother is the lord of gold. King of the giant hosts is he, and worst of all in cruelty. This Ravan's dread commands impel 2 demons who in might excel, Maricha and Subahu hight, to trouble and impede the right. Then thus the king addressed the sage. No power have I, my lord, to wage war with this evil-minded foe. Now pity on my darling show, and upon me of hapless fate. For thee as God I venerate, God's spirits, bards of heavenly birth, the birds of air, the snakes of earth, before the might of Ravan quail. Much less can mortal man avail. He draws, I hear, from out the breast the valor of the mightiest. No, never can I with him contend, or with the forces he may send. How can I then my darling lend, godlike, unskilled in battle? No, I will not let my young child go. Force of thy right, those mighty ones, Sunda and Upasunda's sons, are fierce as fate to overthrow. I will not let my child go. Maricha and Suahu fell, are valiant and instructed well. One of the twain I might attack, with all my friends their lot to back. End of Canto 22. Canto 23. Vashishta's speech. While thus the hapless monarch spoke, paternal love his utterance broke. Then words like these the saint returned, and fury in his bosom burned. Didst thou, O king, a promise make, and wishest now thy word to break? A son of Raghu's line should scorn to fail in faith, a man forsworn. But if thy soul can bear the shame, I will return even as I came. Live with thy sons, and joy be thine, false scion of Kakutstha's line. As Vishwamitra, mighty sage, was moved with this tempest's rage, earth rocked and reeled throughout her frame, and fear upon the immortals came. But Saint Vasista, wisest seer, observant of his vows austere, saw the whole world convulsed with dread, and thus unto the monarch said, Thou, born of old Ikshwaku's seed, art justice self and mortal weed, constant and pious, blessed by fate, the right thou must not violate. Thou, Raghu's son, so famous through the triple world as just and true, perform thy bounden duty still, nor stain thy race by deed of ill. If thou have sworn and now refuse, thou must thy store of merit lose. Then, monarch, let thy Rama go, nor fear for him the demon foe. The fiends shall have no power to hurt him trained to war or inexpert, nor vanquish him in battlefield, for Kushik's son youth will shield. He is incarnate justice, he the best of men for bravery, embodied love of penance drear, among the wisest without a peer. Full well he knows, great Kushik's son, the arms celestial every one, arms from the gods themselves concealed, far less to other men revealed. These arms to him, when earth he swayed, mighty Krishava's pleased conveyed. Krishava's sons they are indeed, brought forth by Daksha's lovely seed, heralds of conquest, strong and bold, brilliant of semblance manifold. Jaya and Vijaya most fair, and 100 splendid weapons bear. Of Jaya, glorious as the morn, first 50 noble sons were born, boundless in size, yet viewless also. They came the demons to subdue, and 50 children also came of Vijaya the beauteous dame. Samharas named of mighty force, hard to assail or check in course. Of these the hermit knows the use, and weapons new can he produce. All these the mighty saint will yield to Rama's hand to own and wield. And armed with these, beyond a doubt, shall Rama put those fiends to rout. For Rama and the people's sake, for thine own good, my counsel take. Nor seek, O king, with fond delay, the parting of thy son to stay. End of Canto. Canto 24. The Spells. Vasishtha thus was speaking still, the monarch of his own free will, bade with quick zeal and joyful cheer Rama and Lakshman hasten near. Mother and sire in loving care sped their dear son with rite and prayer. Vasishtha blessed him ere he went, o'er his loved head the father bent, and then to Kaushik's son resigned Rama with Lakshman close behind. Standing by Vishwamitra's side, the youthful hero lotus-eyed, the wind god saw and sent a breeze, whose sweet pure touch just waved the trees. There fell from heaven a flowery rain, and with the song and dance the strain of shell and tambour sweetly blent, as forth the son of Raghu went. The hermit led, behind him came the bow-armed Rama, dear to fame, whose locks were like the raven's wing. Then Lakshman, closely following, the gods and Indra, filled with joy, looked down upon the royal boy, and much they longed the death to see of their ten-headed enemy. Rama and Lakshman paced behind that hermit of the lofty mind, as the young Ashwins, heavenly pair, follow Lord Indra through the air. On arm and hand the guard they wore, quiver and bow and sword they bore. Two fire-born gods of war seemed they, he, Shiva's self, who led the way. Upon fair Sarju's southern shore they now had walked a league and more, when thus the sage in accents mild to Rama said, Beloved child, this lustrous water duly touch, my counsel will avail thee much. Forget not all the words I say, nor let the occasion slip away. Lo, with two spells I thee invest, the mighty am the mightiest. Over thee fatigue shall never prevail, nor age or change thy limbs assail. Thee powers of darkness never shall smite in tranquil sleep or wild delight. No one is there in all the land thine equal for the vigorous hand. Thou, when thy lips pronounce the spell, shalt have no peer in heaven or hell. None in the world with thee shall vie, O sinless one, in apt reply. In fortune, knowledge, wit, and tact, wisdom to plan, and skill to act. This double science take, and gain glory, that shall for aye remain. Wisdom and judgment spring from each of these fair spells, whose use I teach. Hunger and thirst, unknown to thee, high in the worlds thy rank shall be. For these two spells, with might endued, are the great Father's heavenly brood, and thee, O chief, may fitly grace. thou glory of Kakutstha's race. Virtues which none can match are thine, Lord, from thy birth of gifts divine. And now these spells of might shall cast fresh radiance over the gifts thou hast. Then Rama duly touched the wave, raised suppliant hands, bowed low his head, and took the spells the hermit gave, whose soul on contemplation fed. From him whose might these gifts enhanced, a brighter beam of glory glanced. So shines in all his autumn blaze the day god of the thousand rays. The hermit's wands those youths supplied, as pupils used to holy guide. And then the night in sweet content on Saraju's pleasant bank they spent. End of Canto. Canto 25. The Hermitage of Love. Soon as appeared the morning light, up rose the mighty anchorite, and thus to youthful Rama said, who lay upon his leafy bed, high fate is hers who calls thee son. Arise, it's break of day. Rise, chief, and let those rites be done, due at the morning's ray. At that great sage's high behest, up sprang the princely pair, to bathing rites themselves addressed, and breathed the holiest prayer. The morning task completed, they to Vishwamitra came, that store of holy works, to pay the worship saints may claim. Then to the hallowed spot they went, along fair Saraju's side, where mix her waters confluent with three-pathed Ganga's tide. There was a sacred hermitage, where saints devout of mind their lives through many a lengthened age to penance had resigned. That pure abode the princess eyed with unrestrained delight, and thus unto the saint they cried, rejoicing at the sight, whose is that hermitage we see? Who makes his dwelling there? Full of desire to hear are we, O saint, the truth declare. The hermit, smiling, made reply to the two boys' request. Hear Rama, who in days gone by this calm retreat possessed. Kandarpa in apparent form, called Kama by the wise, dared Umas, a new wed lord, to storm, and make the god his prize. Against Sthanu's self, on rites austere and vows intent, they say, his bold rash hand be dared to rear, though Sthanu cried, away, but the god's eye with scornful glare felt terrible on him, dissolved the shape that was so fair, and burnt up every limb, since the great god's terrific rage destroyed his form and frame. Kama in each succeeding age has borne Ananga's name. So, where his lovely form decayed, this land is Anga's child, sacred to him of old, this shade, and hermits undefiled. Here scripture talking elders sway each sense with firm control, and penance rites have washed away all sin from every soul. One night, fair boy, we will here spend, a pure stream on each hand, and with tomorrow's light we'll bend our steps to yonder strand. Here let us bathe, and free from stain, to that pure grove repair, sacred to Kama, and remain one night in comfort there. With penance, far discerning eye, the saintly men beheld their coming, and with transport high, each holy bosom swelled. To Kushik's son the gift they gave, that honored guest should greet. Water they brought his feet to lave, and showed him honor meet. Rama and Lakshman next obtained in due degree their share. Then with sweet talk the guests remained, and charmed each listener there. The evening prayers were duly said, with voices calm and low. Then on the ground each laid his head, and slept till morning's glow. End of Canto. Canto 26. The Forest of Tadaka. When the fair light of morning rose, the princely tenors of their foes followed his morning worship over, the hermit to the river's shore. The high-souled men, with thoughtful care, a pretty barge had stationed there. All cried, O Lord, this barge ascend, and with thy stately followers bend to yonder side thy prosperous way, with naught to check thee or delay. Nor did the saint their rede reject. He bade farewell with due respect, and crossed, attended by the twain, that river rushing to the main. When now the bark was half way over, Rama and Lakshman heard the roar, that louder grew and louder yet, of waves by dashing the waters met. Then Rama asked the mighty seer, what is the tumult that I hear of waters cleft in mid-career? Soon as the speech of Rama, stirred by deep desire to know, he heard, the pious saint began to tell what paused the waters roar and swell. On high Kailasa's distant hill there lies a noble lake, whose water, born from Brahma's will, the name of Manas take. Thence, hollowing wherever they flow, the streams of Saraju fall, and wandering through the plains below, embrace Ayodhya's wall. Still preserved in Saraju's name, Sarovar's fame we trace, the flood of Brahma, whence she came to run her holy race. To meet great Ganga, here hies with tributary wave. Hence the loud roar, ye hear arise, of floods that swell and rave. Here, pride of Raghu's line, do thou in humble adoration bow. He spoke, the princes both obeyed, and reverence to each river paid. They reached the southern shore at last, and gaily on their journey passed. A little space beyond there stood a gloomy, awe-inspiring wood. The monarch's noble son began to question thus the holy man, whose gloomy forests meet mine eye, like some vast cloud that fills the sky. Pathless and dark it seems to be, where birds in thousands wander free, where shrill cicadas' cries resound, and fowl of dismal note abound. Lion, rhinoceros, and bear, boar, tiger, elephant are there. The shrubs and thorns run wild. Thou, sal, bignonia, bale are found, and every tree that grows on ground. How is the forest styled? The glorious saint this answer made: "Dear child of Raghu, hear, who dwells within the horrid shade that looks so dark and drear, where now is wood. Long ere this day two broad and fertile lands, Malaja and Karusha lay, adorned by heavenly hands. Here mourning friendship's broken ties, Lord Indra of the thousand eyes hungered and sorrowed many a day, his brightness soiled with mud and clay, when in a storm of passion he had slain his dear friend Namuchi. Then came the gods and saints who bore their golden pitchers brimming over with holy streams that banish stain, and bathed Lord Indra pure again. When in this land the god was freed from spot and stain of impious deed, for that his own dear friend he slew, high transport thrilled his bosom through. Then in his joy the lands he blessed, and gave a boon they long possessed, because these fertile lands retain the washings of the blot and stain. It was thus Lord Indra sware, Malaja and Karusha's name shall celebrate with deathless fame my malady and care. So be it, all the immortals cried, when Indra's speech they heard, and with acclaim they ratified the name his lips conferred. Long time, O victor of thy foes, these happy lands had sweet repose, and higher still in fortune rose. At length a spirit, loving ill, Tadaka, bearing shapes at will, whose mighty strength, exceeding vast, 1,000 elephants surpassed, was to fierce Sunda, lord and head of all the demon armies wed. From her Lord Indra's spear in might, giant Maricha sprang to light, and she a constant plague and pest. These two fair realms has long distressed. Now dwelling in her dark abode, a league away she bars the road. And we, O Rama, hence must go, where lies the forest of the foe. Now on thine own right arm rely, and my command obey. Smite the foul monster that she die, and take the plague away. To reach this country none may dare, fallen from its old estate, which she, whose fury naught can bear, has left so desolate. And now my truthful tale is told, how with accursed sway the spirit plagued this wood of old, and ceases not today.